Hi, and welcome to Prepping Essentials.
Russia's war in Ukraine has entered uncharted territory. 2 of its missiles have landed in Poland, NATO territory. Moscow's defence ministry has denied it's involved, but the incident has triggered a diplomatic emergency in Europe. The missiles have reportedly killed 2 people, hitting a village on the Polish-Ukrainian border. The Pentagon is working to confirm the strike and the circumstances surrounding it. Under the NATO treaty, an attack on one member state is considered an attack on all NATO allies.
Well, welcome to another weekend. It's Sunday the 20th of November, and in all honesty, I started to do this video yesterday. It's not the usual down on the field because there were issues with road access getting into the field, so I was there very early yesterday morning to get in and to get out before the road closures kicked in. So I was planning on doing just this video from the house yesterday, and I must have done it about 3 times, and I was getting more and more and more angry the more I did it. And I kind of went off on a couple of rants, and I don't really want to do that on YouTube videos. There's enough doom and gloom out there without me adding to it. So, fake news. Anyone who has watched the news this week, particularly on Tuesday night, could have been forgiven for thinking that that was it. World War III was here and game over. And indeed, the media, the mainstream media, and indeed some leading officials from governments around the world literally launched themselves into this escalating crisis in Ukraine, or what seemed to be an escalating crisis in Ukraine. Because when the news media started breaking the story on Tuesday night, I think it was about 7 o'clock, 10 past 7, night time, all of the headlines were reading the same. It was variations of Russia attacks Poland, Russian missiles attack Poland, Russian missiles explode in Poland, killing 2 people. And within the space of about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, my friend Gary, my neighbour on the fields, hi Gary, if you're watching, he sent me a text message saying, "Are you watching this? It looks like the media wants World War III." Because within the space of about 20 minutes, half an hour, it had gone from Russian missiles attack Poland to Poland's a NATO member, we must invoke Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, and let's mobilise NATO and launch an attack on Russia.
Back now on Sunrise with more on our breaking news. Russian missiles have struck Poland this morning in a concerning new development in the war in Ukraine. Let's go live to 7 News Europe correspondent Sarah Greenhalgh. Sarah, with Poland being a member of NATO, this could have major implications because NATO says they come to protect their own, don't they?
That's exactly right, Koshi. Good morning. So Article 5 states that essentially an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all members. And given that now Poland is one of the 30 member states of this military alliance, as you correctly said before, the world is basically holding its breath now to see how NATO will respond.
And I'll not post the screenshots of the exchange from me and Gary, but it was along the lines of, are you buying this? No, I'm not. I think it's suspect. Yes, so do I. If the media had their way, we'd be under the table now, sheltering for the incoming missiles. It was just crazy. And it was crazy pretty much all the way through Tuesday night. So if anyone was working late or had gone to bed early or didn't have the news on, Wednesday morning, this was in full flight, and everybody was calling for mobilising NATO to attack Russia. I remember the Australian president, we had that G20 summit in Bali. Have you noticed how all of these Western countries can bang on about climate change and we've got to ban beef and sheep and chicken and stop eating meat and go vegetarian and stop driving cars and stop heating our houses with gas because we've got to save the planet? And yet they jet to the furthest flung part of the planet where it's beautiful and hot and it's 5-star plus luxury in their private jets with their entourage in other private jets, burning God knows how much fossil fuel to have a chat. Something that they could have done in any European country, which is where most of them are from, or indeed, like you and I probably do at work, do it over bloody Teams. And don't fly lots and lots of planes all the way around the planet. Anyway, I digress and I almost went onto a rant again. Now you can see why I've done this 3 or 4 times and kind of stopped. If all goes to plan, I will publish this one. So if I don't go on a rant, I will actually end up publishing something this weekend. But it's getting close. It's Sunday night. Anyway, where was I? Fake news.
According to senior U.S. military officials, Russian missiles have landed inside Poland, and 2 individuals have reportedly died as a result. Now, CNN reports that the 2 individuals who were killed were farmers in a rural part of Poland. And since Poland is a NATO member, there is some possibility that, pending an investigation, allied nations could invoke what's referred to as Article 5. I'll give you details on what that means in just a moment, but a lot is unknown about this, including lack of confirmation that these were in fact Russian missiles. Russia has denied that it's their missiles. In fact, they claim that blaming Russia for this attack is a provocation. Although, I mean, who else would do this? It's certainly not Ukraine, right? It's certainly not Ukraine, right? It's certainly not Ukraine, right?
Yeah, so Wednesday morning, it was in complete overdrive. And all of a sudden, little media articles and clips on YouTube and TikTok and WhatsApp and Instagram started filtering through of this alleged Russian missile. And the fragments of the missile were there, and all of these inspectors from Poland were running around picking all these pieces up and photographing them. And the pictures made their way out onto social media, and some of them made their way into mainstream media. And it became rapidly clear that it wasn't a Russian missile at all. It was a Soviet-era anti-aircraft missile, or anti-missile missile. I think it was an S-300, which the Russians haven't used for however long. But curiously enough, Ukraine does. And Ukraine, literally that evening, had been throwing these all over the sky to try and shoot down Russian missiles.
This time yesterday, world leaders were holding their breath, worried about a dangerous escalation in the war in Ukraine after a missile strike in Poland. Was it Moscow? Was it intentional? And would a strike on a NATO country spark a wider war across Europe? It's now believed the missile was a stray fired from Ukraine. Chief reporter Chris Reason has been tracking the developments. Chris, NATO says it doesn't look like Russia fired this missile, but President Zelensky of Ukraine is saying it definitely wasn't one of theirs.
Yeah, Angela, good afternoon to you. Look, yesterday, as you say, we were full of speculation that it was a Ukrainian air defence system that somehow gone awry, gone wrong. Well, that has now been firmed up, all but confirmed by Polish authorities, the White House back briefing the journalists as well, and also sources from the intelligence community, basically insisting that this thing was a Ukrainian missile, an air defence system that was fired at an incoming Russian missile. It missed and straight into Polish territory, and the results we saw: 2 people dead as it hit that remote farm village just 6 k's from the Polish-Ukrainian border.
A small village and a blast that sent shockwaves around the world. Initial reports suggested Russia may have fired it at Poland, a NATO member, killing 2 people. In Bali, fresh from an emergency meeting, Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden discussed the attack. But going into it, the American president sounded uncertain.
It's unlikely in lines of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
It now appears the missile that hit Poland was fired by Ukrainian forces. That's an incoming Russian missile.
Good evening. There's been a late development in the deadly missile strike on Poland. Latest intelligence suggesting Ukraine fired the rocket in defence.
So over the course of Wednesday, the media started backpedaling and, oh, well, you know, it still could be a false flag. It could be Russia just trying to bluff us and la, 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 so on and so forth. Government ministers and political leaders were all coming out saying, oh, well, it looks like it was a Ukraine missile that did it. Ukraine's missile blew up a grain silo and a tractor in Poland, but it's still Russia's fault. And of course, as we headed towards the weekend, it all suddenly went quiet because the game was up. What had been presented as an excuse to go to World War III, and literally Tuesday night, Wednesday, we were like that far off. If Biden had had one of his moments, or his handlers hadn't handled him properly, who knows what we'd have been doing today. I'd probably be under the desk in full gear with my mask on, waiting for the hordes to arrive. But I jest, and it's a serious subject, and war is a serious subject, and I don't envy anybody who happens to be in one. I've been there myself back in the 80s, and it's not nice. And for political leaders, it's not big and it's not clever either. And we should be doing all that we can to avoid a war with anybody, really. The West's track record on wars over the last 20, 30 years has not been good. And it seemed, certainly Tuesday, Wednesday, as if the hawks were going to get their way and the money printers would start printing to buy endless amounts of weaponry, and we were off to war. So, moral of the story, I guess, is you really do have to take the mainstream media with a huge, not a pinch of salt, but a trailer load of salt, because there is an agenda behind all of this. And in terms of this one political agenda, Ukraine, this has been going on since, well, let's say 2009, really it started, but 2014 it really kicked in. Do your homework. There's plenty of open source material out there, including from our own governments who are telling us we've got to defend Ukraine. There is evidence there from our own governments to show how we arrived at this situation. So take it all with a huge grain of salt. There are people that are using this as a distraction from all of the other stuff that's going on around the world, and as a distraction from their own political failings. And there are quite a lot of people around the world in government that would actually like to have a little war, or a medium-sized war. I think the only thing that's preventing them this time is it's not some third world developing nation, shall we say, with a not so great army and no big political friends around the world. It's not one of those countries. This is something completely different. This is a superpower that Western governments are tinkering with, and a superpower with a lot more nukes than we have. And we don't want to go down that road. So, yeah, before everybody starts diving in and pointing fingers, pause for breath, have a little think about it, and maybe, if you dig around enough, you'll come up with as close as you're ever going to get to the truth. But it certainly isn't what's in the mainstream media, that's for sure. A couple of other bits and bobs today. I've been tidying out the garage. Next weekend, we'll see what the weather's like. It's been horrendously bad this last week. We've had flooding in different parts of the UK, and they've forecast snow this weekend up in Scotland. So definite winter weather. There's no way I'm going to get out and about on the little red tractor for sure. Chickens are still cooped up in the coop. We've still got avian bird flu, so they're not allowed out. So there's not a great deal I can do down on the field and in the cabin. So I might do a combination field garage, or I might just do garage. Now that it's starting to look something like in there, there's still a lot of rubbish that needs moving out. But it's at least the new racking's up and stuff is out of boxes. I think I've got one box left that I need to unpack. But the idea is that we'll start doing some sort of long-term food storage, prepper gear type stuff, now that I can see where stuff is in the garage. So, fingers crossed, that'll be starting next week. And of course, there'll be a normal cabinet chat, either cabin chat or garage chat. Shall I call it the bunker, since we came so close to World War III this week? I might, or I might not, I don't know. Here in the UK, more government spin. They've been telling us ever since the government got rocky and we lost a Prime Minister in the space of 6 weeks, the new one, whose wife is a billionaire, by the way, and who is a multimillionaire himself, from a banking hedge fund background, that doesn't sound man of the people, does it? Doesn't sound like he's going to be putting the common man first. But again, I digress. I don't want to go off on a political rant now. They've been telling us, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We really get how the cost of living is affecting everybody. We totally get how energy prices people are struggling. Don't worry, we'll sort it out. So what did they do this week? Something I mentioned in a previous video, actually. They've announced huge tax rises and huge cuts in public spending. So in addition to coping with the energy crisis, the food crisis, the cost of living crisis, and all the other crisis that's going on, we've now got a tax crisis coming, and we've got a cut in government services coming. So if winter wasn't going to be bad enough already, just wait until spring when these cuts and tax rises kick in. Inflation's already over 11%. I suspect we'll be over 12 by the end of December, if not 13. Well, let's wait and see. One other thing, I don't have my tinfoil hat because I'm not in the cabin, but do you remember a couple of weeks back I was talking about all these mysterious attacks on Russian critical infrastructure and military targets? There's a lot of information coming to light now, leaked emails and memos about the Crimea bridge attack. Never mind the Crimea bridge, we live in Europe. We're interested in Nord Stream 2 pipeline attack. Weren't the Swedes investigating that? I think they were. Sweden has declared that they found traces of explosives and explosive implement fragments, so bomb fragments for want of a better description. It was probably a mine rather than a bomb. They found the explosive traces, so since the technology is there to pretty much identify from these trace elements the factory that made the explosives, why aren't we hearing which factory made it? Question. They announced that they'd found this at the start of the week, and then it all went really quiet, and it still is really quiet. So mainstream media, they continuously pump out fake news, the agenda of their political or elitist masters, so buy it all with a grain of salt. Now, buy it all with a huge truckload of salt, because they have an agenda. They are trying to direct your thought and tell you what you should be thinking. Don't allow them to do that. Do your own research, do your own thinking. Don't become a sheep. And with that, I'm going to go and get some dinner before it gets too late. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you're staying safe and well and enjoying your weekend. Apologies for the disruption to my video this weekend. You really didn't want to see take 1, take 2, take 3, and there might have even been a take 4 before we got to this one. I do try and stay clear of the rants and the doom and the gloom, but sometimes, you know, the way things are now, it's really difficult not to go off on one. So hopefully this video hasn't been going off on one, and hopefully you are all safe and well and enjoying your weekend. Do let me know what you think in the comment section about this topic or any other for that matter, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Well, that's it for this video. I hope there was something in there that was of interest to you. If you did like the video, please do click on the like button. Also feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. As always, I welcome any comments, questions or suggestions you might have. Just feel free to leave them in the comment section below. But for now, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.